Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you all are having a wonderful evening. Great week so far. Welcome to Midnight Hatter Live, the weekly variety show where we talk Gundam, gaming, and Gunpla. I am Stephen Bayless, your host, aka Midnight Hatter, and joining me as always, the Blue Gamer Gundam explainer, Adam Blue. How are you, ma'am?
Hey, doing good, doing good. Uh-oh, saw the shake there. Yeah, because my
Mm.
camera. You guys might notice different background. I'm in a new spot, but yeah, I got to figure out the thing with the shaky camera arm. Not a fan of that, but
You know what? I don't mind it
all good.
because honestly, this has been one of those instances, and you guys can tell me in chat. I feel like our lighting actually looks like we are almost in the same room for once.
Dude, that is a
It's
good
like
point.
we both have a little bit of pink coming in from the sides. It's coming together pretty nicely.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I really like that. There's been this evolution of the lighting
Yeah.
across shows.
Yeah, one
Yeah.
day we're just gonna have, like, a full studio space and do the whole shebang.
Oh,
Hopefully you guys enjoyed that opening video. I recorded that from G Generation Eternal because I finally, after this last season of the Master League, I finally maxed out the EX Zeta Gundam and unlocked the home screen animation. So I've got home screen animations for the Zeta, the Zazabi, and the Red Zeta, believe it or not. So I love logging into Eternal and seeing that every time I open up my open up
yeah.
my app.
Yeah, I that is a cool thing about it. It really, like, immerses you and all that.
Yeah, the art is fantastic.
Yeah.
And happy spooky season. It is October
Ooh,
1st.
that's right.
Actually, I don't know if I probably didn't do it. Uh,
A pumpkin?
Today is actually episode 202. I think I have it listed as
Oh.
201 again. But
Oh,
this is episode 202 of Midnight Hatter Live, October 1st, 2025, which means it's Patreon day, which means if you guys are subscribed to the Patreon, you have access to 3D files for these um, 1 to 144th scale entry grade slash high grade MS hands. um,
that's awesome.
I showed them off on last week's stream. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed them. And yeah, they're going to be going live on the website soon as I can hammer out some details with the silicone casting and all that good stuff. Additionally, also live on the website are the Magna Deck 2.0s, which about 30% bigger than the previous edition, and they hold about 70 sleeved cards, meaning that they
Wow.
are perfect for your Gundam card game decks. Yeah, these things are coming out. I'm cranking them off the printer as fast as I can.
No, that's cool, man. That's cool how you've iterated on that. Because I did not know of the sleeve thing. Like, again, because 'cause I'm kinda newer to the whole card game thing, but having them all sleeved almost seems ridiculous, but that's what
You
they
know,
do.
I thought I accounted for it because I was like, okay, each card is 0.2 millimeters thick. If I were to add 0.3 millimeters, that means that every card is 0.5 millimeters. What I didn't do was account for like the air in between the cards, the when they're sleeved, because like there is a difference. Like, I guess if I can try and illustrate this to you guys, when you have like a stack of sleeved cards like this, they're pretty thick, but you
Yeah.
can compress them and make them slimmer. Um, and so like, yeah, it was not the correct measurement on the first go
Hmm.
around, and so the folks that did order a Magnadeck 1.0, which includes you, Adam, are going
Yeah.
to be getting a free upgrade to the Magnadeck 2.0,
That's
a
awesome.
la No Man's Sky. I'm trying to go back and fix my
Oh, yeah.
mistakes.
That's funny. Uh, no, that's
Um
cool.
But yeah, lots of fun stuff to talk about tonight. Obviously, you guys saw there is an Arsenal base crossover that I'm pretty excited about that we're gonna mention just briefly before we get into the chief topic, which has been the cause of lots of drama over on X slash Twitter, is our good friend Zionic Republic, Zionic Scans, posted a translation of an interview between Fukui and Tomino, which the interview actually took place back in 2004, and we're just getting a translation of it here 20 years later. So obviously some of the references and some of the context around the interview are a little bit dated, but a lot of the stuff holds true today. And given the context of the time, it was right around when the Zeta Gundam trilogy movies were coming out,
Oh, yeah,
the
that's right.
remakes. And so there's some, uh, how do I phrase this? Tomino tries to kind of relate Zeta Gundam to contemporary American military operations at that time, and I'll
Right.
leave it at that before we hop into the, specifics.
That's a good topic.
Oh, yeah. But another good topic is the Zero system from Gundam
Oh,
Wing,
yeah.
which I have to say, I love that you are getting back into Gundam Wing. If you guys haven't checked it out, Adam dropped a video this morning on the Zero system from Gundam Wing over on Gundam Explained, so link down below in the
Yep.
description to check that out.
Thank you.
Honestly, the Zero system is one of those things that it seems like an overplayed trope now, but at the time in '95, that was like it was such a cool concept of, like, a machine that could tell you the future, but only
Yeah.
when you were using it to fight, you know?
Yeah.
And the way that you talked about how each Gundam pilot had an opportunity to use the Zero system at one
Yeah.
point or another, which was
Right.
interesting.
Yeah, and so really a takeaway I got from, making that video was how much the Zero System itself is like a being within, because it's
Of
really
its own
playing
character,
into all the characters and everything. Um,
except one. I don't believe that Wu Fei ever piloted the Wing Zero.
I think was there something I read about he had used the Zero System at some point? Um,
Maybe so. Maybe in, like, a Frozen Teardrop or something, but I'm fairly confident
oh,
that
okay.
in the
Yeah, it could've been.
show, he was
Yeah.
the only one that never used the Wing Zero.
Yeah. Okay, so I see what you mean in the show, yeah, versus him, yeah.
'Cause, like, Catra did, Troa did, I'm pretty sure Duo did,
Yeah, but Wu Fei, yeah,
which
yeah.
could explain why Wu Fei, changed sides in Endless Waltz.
Yeah, so, yeah, there's more deeper elements to Wing than I think we, all give it credit for.
That's
It's
what I'm
it's
saying.
it's definitely, and, especially considering it's just been in recent years that I watched it. After, it's like the time capsule thing. What would someone think of it now? Watch, you know what I mean? And it's like,
Exactly.
I could still see, like, where it stays with you even though it's like, "What is this?" You know? Yeah.
So Ultronmus says Wu Fei freaked out immediately when he tried using it. Yeah.
Okay, okay, so, yeah, he
Um, Said he tested the Wing Zero system, but never in Wing specifically in Frozen Teardrop. Yep, he uses
okay,
it.
okay,
And yeah, Ultronus also said, "Yeah, it says 201. I thought I was bugging. Was the last episode non-canon?" Well, technically, yes, the last episode was non-canon because Adam wasn't here for it. So it's like
that's
it doesn't
hilarious.
count. We're gonna strike it from the record, pretend that it never exists.
Yeah,
That
those are
is the
kinda
only
weird
way to.
episodes, when it's only one of us and we're just kinda like, "Okay, what are we doing?
Uh,
What do I do with my hands?"
But I'm glad you brought up the idea of the time capsule because that kind of relates to what we're talking about with this interview that we're gonna dive into later,
Right,
is, like,
yeah,
these are those moments that are captured in time that we don't, like it's not that they're not important anymore because that context no longer exists or, like, because circumstances have changed, but you have to view them in the context that they were originally created in, and so I always go back to, like, the idea of watching the original 0079 cartoon is you can't watch it with the same sort of, sensibilities of a 2025 zillennial, whatever the current
yeah.
generation idea is, where it's like you're consuming it as, like, content. You really do have to put yourself in the shoes of a kid in 1980 that gets home from school, and you get to watch one 22-minute episode, and then that's it. That you have to wait till next week to follow up on it, you know?
Yeah.
Because it really does change the way that you perceive what you're watching.
Yeah, and even with these older interviews, older stories, a lot of times there's the essence of wisdom, even if the analogies don't seem modern, because it could be where,
100%.
someone of experience is distilling issues at those times to like the bare like humanity of it. And I think,
Yeah,
Tomino's a good example of that because it almost sounds like what he's saying is crazy based on what's going on. But no, no, no. He's really looking at it through the lens of that time, but he's saying
right.
something profound.
Yeah, pretty poignant.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, before we get into that, I do want to share with you guys this stuff that dropped regarding the Gundam Arsenal based arcade card game. So this is a cross promotion between Gundam Extreme versus Infinite Boost 2, which I mean, man, the number of Extreme versus titles in Japan is just getting absurd.
I
But
know.
they announced that there's going to be a special color for the Zeta Gundam and special cards in the Arsenal base arcade card game to reflect the Titans Capture Color Zeta Gundam.
Ooh.
Um, and but what's interesting about this is it's the first time we see a Camille in Titans gear. So like Titans version Camille, which is a
Like,
cool
first time in video games?
first time ever. I like
Really? Bandai has never had any official Camille and
N
a Titans?
never had, like, a Camille in a Titans. In fact, so, like, obviously, this is the banner for the cross promotion between Infinite Boost and the Arsenal base card.
Yeah.
Here is the Arsenal base card for the Zeta Gundam Capture Color, as well as Camille Badan in full emo glory here.
I love it. I love the way he looks.
Oh, yeah, I
I
mean,
think it's
it's straight
perfect.
up Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man 3. He is about to finger gun you guys to death.
Yeah. No, that's
Um
great.
But what's fascinating is that this is not the first time we've seen a Titans colored Zeta, because obviously in my favorite Gundam video game, you've got
Yeah.
Gundam versus Zeta Gundam, the Titans color Zeta Gundam. But in that game, if you play as the Titans, you literally cannot select Camille as a character. You can only select Titans and Axis characters. So even if you're using this Gundam, you can't play as Camille.
Okay, interesting. So they were keeping it where he wouldn't have so then I guess it would have been stolen. Do they
Yeah.
explain it in the game?
They don't explain it in that game now, but, it's interesting that they reference it in Arsenal Base as capture color, like,
Yeah.
implying that it was AUG and then it was captured,
Yeah.
but the I
I like
that seems to conflict with, like, if Camille never joined the AUG in the first place, if he became a Titan, would they have made the Zeta Gundam without him?
No.
I don't
Well,
think so.
hold up. If he joined the Titans before they built the Zeta Gundam?
Mhm.
Yeah, because 'cause didn't he just kinda come up with the Zeta Gundam anyway?
I mean, that's how he did it in the anime, is,
Right. Yeah, and I
yeah,
think it implied something
Astonaj
different.
comes in and he's like, "Ooh, that's cool looking."
Yeah, because, what would motivate him for the Zeta Gundam to look the way it does?
Right.
So,
Yeah, 'cause
maybe that was always in his mind. You
possibly. So, yeah, he just always had that, yeah, always had that creative spark for the Zeta.
well, and then also, you know how,
Mm.
like, the Zeta is technically a failed mobile suit?
Right, yeah,
I
'cause he
think that
couldn't.
I think I buy it more that he designed it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Because 'Cause isn't that kind of amazing? Even though he is
right.
a new type, but still, I think that the fact that it was this, like, crazy concept and idea to where the future versions had to be refined, um, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of fits in with everything that was going on where the Titans had kind of adopted that Xeon mentality of like, let's just crank out as many prototypes as we can, and whichever one sticks, that's the one that we're gonna try and mass produce.
Yep.
Um, but I gotta admit, as much as I hate the Titans, Titans color Zeta
It looks
looks
good.
pretty cool.
I mean, that would look awesome with, 2 Titan Mark IIs flanking it, like, as if they're
Yeah,
going out into battle. Yeah.
yeah, that would be
Would
the squad.
wait, if it's Camille, would it also be Emma?
So that's the other question is, and I've seen a lot of fan art over on X/Twitter where Emma stays with the Titans because Camille joins the Titans, and so she stays in a Mark II. There's so many fanfics that go,
I bet.
flying out when once
So
you
many
once you
different
introduce the
directions.
idea. But, like, how do you think it would happen? Like, do you think because obviously the first introduction that Camille has to the Titans that we know of is Jared, and Jared calling him a girl. How do you reconcile that with Camille becoming a Titan?
So, I think what happens is they tr they trade Camille, to save his mom.
You
Okay?
and I, like, same wavelength because I was
Okay.
just thinking, like, especially when that military police guy's talking to him and he's going through his file and he's like, "Whoa, you're a mobile suit pilot? Like, you're top of your class in karate? Like, how
Oh,
come
yeah.
you never enlisted in military service?"
Yeah.
And Camille kind of, like, brushes him off. He could have just said, "Well, look, we're gonna cause a whole lot of trouble for your mom and dad if you don't, toe the line for us. So"
Oh, that's well, I was thinking even further when she's in the capsule.
True, that too, yeah.
And what if he kills Jared? Saves his mom,
Still
and
gets Jared.
somehow and maybe somehow, no, I don't know. I don't there would have to be a good reason for him to join the Titans unless it was because Jared was dead. He kind of filled that void, and they were like, "Okay, you can do whatever you want."
Yeah, because
Um,
there's no like, I don't see a Titans that has Jared and Camille together.
right, exactly. It would
Yeah.
almost be like that would have to be the main change that happens. But I also see, um what was I gonna so if Emma stayed I don't know. Okay, what do you have any other ideas?
No, I mean, because I don't see any situation in which Camille defects from the AU after the Zeta Gundam's built.
Yeah, because at that point, yeah, so it would have to yeah, that's a really cool I think that's a very interesting way to do the fanfic instead of just like, "Oh, what if you join Neo Zeon?"
Right.
Like, that's almost like later on, the continuation.
Well, way
Um
to take a shot at me, like, low key, like
No, no, that no, because you've done it already. So this is like the other
Adam's out here like, "Hey, remember that video you made?
uh,
Yeah, that's kinda crap." Like
no, I don't mean the content of it, but just like normally fanfic or alternate timelines like in the games is
No, I
that.
know what you meant. I
Yeah.
know what you meant. No, that's funny, and honestly, that's where a lot of, like, the coolest ideas come from that, and even in,
Yeah.
like, Gundam versus Zeta Gundam, what was fascinating was the Gaplant in particular. So, all of the units have, like, an alternate color scheme to match the opposing army's colors, right? What is fascinating about the Gaplant is that if you didn't know too much about Gundam, or if you've only watched the TV shows, you would never know why the Gaplant is the colors that it is. Because the Gaplant color scheme in Gundam versus Zeta Gundam, when it is given to the AUG/EFSF, is the same color scheme as the Zeta Plus with the red and white, like the Amuro version, the Kariba.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like orange and white. Which doesn't make any sense. Like, you would think if I were making the game, I would be like, "Oh, well, let's just make the Gaplant the same color as the Zeta Gundam, and, like, that will be the AU version of the Gaplant is the Zeta."
Yeah.
But they went a step further. They were like, "No, we're gonna make it the Kariba Zeta Plus, because it's not quite as good as the Zeta Gundam." It's. So I
Wait,
thought that was a very nice, subtle touch to that
So the
game.
grappa colors are orange and white?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, okay.
so
Huh.
pretty cool.
Yeah. I guess I didn't really connect that, this whole time. Hmm.
Neither honestly, after 20 years of playing that game, I only realized it, like, last summer. I was like, "Wait,
Wow.
that's that's the Zeta
Wait
Plus."
wait a minute. I wonder because I think that's referenced in Halo Infinite. Um,
That would be a very deep cut.
yeah, let me look at that again. Yeah, we can keep going. I'm gonna look at that on the side, though.
Cool, cool. Well, getting on to tonight's topic in chief, which of course ties back into Zeta Gundam. As I mentioned, this interview from 2004 between Fukui and Yoshiki Tomino, which one of the things that it's like I respect and I also loathe about Yoshiki Tomino is he infamously gets pretty cagey whenever fans ask him charged questions about political ideologies in his work and things like that. He typically will answer with like troll comments and he dismisses like whenever you're at like a convention or something and say, "Hey, was Char's counterattack based on this conflict that happened in real life?" And he'll be like, "Yeah, sure, whatever you want to hear." Like, he
Yeah,
doesn't. But what's interesting is when he has these interviews with other creators like Ano, like Fukui, he tends
yeah,
to get a little bit more candid. He tends to be a little bit more disarmed, and he like kind of lets his guard down a little bit more,
right.
which I appreciate. Um, but yeah, so this interview was only recently translated by our good buddy Zeonic Scans. Um, and here, let me hop back into a screen share here. So this went live a few days ago, and it has been all the rage all over X/Twitter. Everybody kind of taking their own interpretations from it. I have to say, like for me, this little disclaimer at the top here, and to his credit, I shouldn't have to point this out, but given the mentality, this disclaimer is that the conversations from 2004. I have to say that he kinda tells on himself a little bit here because it's like, if the creatives in question weren't saying anything that contradicted his own views, he probably would not feel compelled to put a disclaimer
Ooh,
that says, like, "Hey, this is 20 years old."
that's
Um
interesting. Is there something, in there that seems like it is timely
So,
just
after reading the full transcript of the interview, there are some things that Fukui and Tomino talk about in regards to national identity that could be misconstrued
Oh,
into, like, current climate political activism around national identity and nationalism. Honestly, and this is the thing that gets me, is it's like you would have to be reading in bad faith to try and pull that out of this. And I've said many times before, like, um, Tomino's not your guy. He's not the based chud that that you think he is, and he's not like the super lefty progressive that you think he is. Like everyone tries to project their own political ideology onto Tomino based on snapshot quotes from out of
yeah.
context interviews and things like that. And I think that that is in poor taste and poor form. You know, more than anything, he's a boomer liberal. And
Well, oh, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
yeah,
'Cause he does even explain himself, or not explain himself, he
he
does
does. And
clear delineates between the nationalism in this, because I remember reading that.
exactly. He is very clear and expressly says what he means.
Yeah,
And and ultimately, Tomino is just like the characters that he writes. He is complex, he is nuanced, he is not the
yeah,
sum of whatever he has consumed on Twitter. And so I think that a lot of the people that kind of get all up in their feelings about their political ideologies tend to stay in lockstep with something that maybe they don't even themselves truly understand. Whereas Tomino is kind of not ashamed to speak his mind, whether it's going to offend one side or another, and we've seen that countless times. So I think that yeah, just as Gundam fans, let's stop trying to say, "Hey, he said this, therefore you are that, and you are not allowed to be in the Gundam fandom," because that's what it always devolves into, right?
Yeah.
This even this interview, we're gonna get into it here in just a second, but even in this interview, it reinforces the idea that I have brought up several times, where even the creator of their own work can change their mind and change their perspective over time, and they no longer identify with the person that they were when they created the thing that we're talking about. And so, um, you know, yeah, shoot, even like that out of context 1998 interview in which Tomino said, "Oh, it wasn't the Gunpla fans that built Gundam. It was the Fujoshis, and like it was all the female Gundam fans.
Oh, yeah.
98% of Gundam fans were female." And even at that time, you know, interviewers were like, "Well, that's not true. Like, you might believe that now, but that wasn't true then." And so, it's important to remember that, like, context is everything. And so, I guess that's my roundabout way of saying that, like, while I think that it's dumb that Zionic even has to put this disclaimer on here, I guess now I understand why he did, because people are gonna run with it and assume that this is perpetual truth. But in spite of that, I think that there's perpetual truth that we can glean from it.
Okay.
Put it that way.
Well, yeah, yes, I did read some of it, earlier. Uh, it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, so what were the biggest takeaways for you in this? Because summary for you guys who haven't read it yet, and it's over on X. I should have posted the link in the description. I forgot to, but Zionic Scans posted it. Petsu-chan, which love Petsu-chan on X/Twitter, also reposted it. So go check it out if you get a chance. If you have not seen it yet, the summary of it is around the Iraq War and Japan supporting U.S. military efforts in Iraq after the post 9/11. And then, of course, because this occurred at the same time that the Zeta Gundam movie trilogy was being made, um, Tomino draws comparisons between the Iraq War and Zeta Gundam, and why he made certain changes to the Zeta Gundam movie trilogy from the original TV show. So there's a lot to kind of unpack there. But Adam, what were your initial takeaways?
Yeah, I like you brought this up before, like, when he's talking to other artists, he tends to really speak, as I was, talking about before, where it's very kind of the essence of what his ideals are, like, through the art, because they're talking about world politics, but also talking about their art form,
Mhm.
and so from that, yeah, I like those kind of discussions, and I think a lot of it is, again, it's the context. Like, there's a lot of things that he is saying that makes sense today if you were to apply it today. Um, yeah, so
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, like, even early in the interview, like, here on screen, you can see it, Fukui mentions that, like, the anti-war sentiment became conflated with anti-American sentiment, right? And so, we see that even today where
yeah,
you might be but, like, let's just draw random associations. It's like you might be anti-immigration, but then that gets conflated as like, well, then you're racist, or like
right,
you might be anti-war, that makes you like complicit in genocide or something. Like,
yeah,
there's always a way of conflating one stance with another, and Fukui saw that even back during that time,
yeah,
and especially among the younger generation, because they weren't, you know, they were the ones that were being sent off to the Middle East to fight for reasons that they didn't even understand, and that they were being manipulated. Like, obviously, it's easy for us to sit here with 20 years of hindsight and say like, "Oh, yeah, there was no existential crisis going on in the Middle East. It was really about protecting economic interests, and
Right.
specifically, they talk about oil, Japan's access to oil, America's access to oil, and so, yeah, you think about this generation that's going off to be sent, like, you know, to die for this stuff, like, of course, they're gonna build resentment. That's,
Yeah.
like, kinda
Yeah.
natural. Um, so it's very interesting, and again, they go on and talk about, which this is funny, "Unless America withdraws, the situation will drag on for years." Spoiler alert, it did.
Yeah. I
It's
know
like,
that,
if you could get in a time capsule and
I
and,
know.
you know, that's what's probably so fascinating about this is, like, I would love to sit down with Tomino and Fukui and talk to them about the things that they said then and how many of the things that they said came to pass. Um,
Yeah, especially, I mean, now it's like you can look back at this stuff and just look at today and be like, well, then it doesn't matter what we think the reason is for any of these wars, but it's just bad faith war shouldn't be happening in the first place. You know, it's and that's what's kind of funny. It's how much we argue, and that's what makes us not understand each other. We argue about the things that don't matter because
right.
we're seeing that as that's the reason, and it's like, no, it's really not. And so, but you can just look in the past and see what Tillman was talking about, and these things, the machine exists. You know,
Yeah. And I think that this was probably the most, interesting insight, and Petsa-chan retweeted this specific part about it, was how the old notion of war no longer exists
right?
because there's no true battlefield anymore, and, like and so since the Second World War, like, every war has been more like a conflict or more like an incident because they're not true battlefields, which is interesting, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Especially for somebody who has made their entire career writing about war and telling stories about
yeah.
about war. Um, yeah, let me see here. Well, where is the quote that I'm looking at here? So this was the one that Petsa-chan retweeted here that I'm just gonna read you this portion here because because this is, to me, I was like, man, Tomino kind of gets Americans more than most Americans kind of get Americans.
Oh, that's pretty good.
And so he said, look, if you focus only on the disposition of Native Americans, then yes, an argument for exploitation stands, but that framework is largely a construct of post war leftist thought. Exploitation did occur, it's a fact, but exploitation of the weak by the strong has been a through line of human history. It is not something unique to American imperialism or capitalism. I have no interest whatsoever in subscribing to an ideological lens cobbled together by the mere half century of leftist thought. The United States is a precedent unlike any other, not a nation in the conventional sense. Its success must be seen as an exception within human history. So this is where
Yeah,
he's talking about like that nature of war having changed, is that like throughout human history, there's always been wars of resources and that's kind of what they're talking about here is it's like the war in Iraq was a war of resources. It's like we're going after oil because we need, like, there's an energy crisis in Japan, and so Japan needs to support America's war in order to protect their energy interests. And so a lot of people attribute this kind of stuff to like, "Oh, well, that's just American imperialism." And it's like, well, no, that's actually like the history of the world is countries going to other countries and taking the things that they need to make
yeah,
to make their country
exactly.
better, right?
Yep.
And so it's not unique to America in that sense. In fact, America stands alone as a country that, in spite of its military strength, and this is not me saying this. This is like in the interview, is he's saying that in spite of the military accomplishments that America was responsible for, a lot of the prosperity that Americans have seen is as a result of economic growth and, like,
Right,
so it's
right.
not conquest that grew America. It was like true, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, what's the word that he
Industry.
yeah, industry. That's a good way of putting it. And then before they start talking about Zeta Gundam, there is the conversation around national identity. Tomino actually uses the term specifically local identity because he's talking about localized cultures. It's
Mhm.
Fukui who brings up the idea of nationalism, and Tomino says that, like, nationalism in and of itself is not a bad thing. That unique cultures can and should exist.
Yeah.
I think that he kind of rejects the idea of, like, the kind of international singular identity, and this is where he kind of gets into Zeta Gundam being a metaphor for this, is that the ensemble cast of Zeta Gundam represents a bunch of unique identities that all have their own voice and all have their own expression in the world, and they all coexist. And there are certain characters, obviously, within Zeta Gundam, just like there are certain characters in real life that seek to stamp down other identities and conquer other identities. And he even references, like, um, Muhammad banning idolatry, right? And like destroying
Mm.
idols, which is not an idea that's unique to Islam, because obviously, like, the idea of idolatry goes back to even like the Old Testament, when you think about like Abrahamic religions. But the idea of violently suppressing idols, I think, is a uniquely Islamic idea. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that, like, you know, nothing in the Old Testament or New Testament, like, they talk about rejecting idols and
Right,
like, idol worship being a bad thing, but it's not like a let's go out and burn them type thing.
right,
um,
right.
with the exception, I guess, of like the Crusades.
Exactly. No interpretations.
Right. Um, so a very interesting perspective on that. And maybe it's a bit of a reach. Like, what do you think? Do you think that Tomino is trying to ascribe importance to his own creative works that is unwarranted, or do you think that there's actually some meat on that bone?
No, I think that's how he thinks about his stuff. That's how he got Gundam made in the first place. I really think he's that kind of like George Lucas,
Yeah.
where it's like he knows what he's setting out to do, and people can interpret them differently, and sometimes the artist does themselves, and like we mentioned, kind of change things around. Um, but yeah, I really do think a lot of that is because they have these deep thoughts anyway, and that probably is sometimes what helps them develop these stories because they do have these messages they're trying to say.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that they're being expressed in creative ways beyond just, like, it would be easy enough to kind of slapdash put together a story about, false idols and like a god that casts people out. Like, you know, to make something that's that on the nose and that
Yeah,
allegorical would be a little bit too much, right? Whereas, using storytelling devices and using ideas, uh, more as like a transmission medium where you can draw parallels without necessarily being bound to that specific definition. And of course, like, the idea that these are also characters, like, they're interesting characters to see, like,
right.
that they're compelling characters to see unfold and express themselves in unique ways. So, yeah, it's a pretty cool thought. And like you said, so this is interesting, is, he and this goes back to the idea that I was talking about, where sometimes, like, a creator's ideas of their own work changes because none of this stuff was brought up around the original discussion of Zeta Gundam in the 80s. But here we are in 2004, and this is his interpretation of how he wrote Zeta Gundam. Is, you know So he said that, he deliberately portrayed Camille's descent into madness as a rejection of escapist anime, and that the show was meant as a warning that if you only consume anime, that you're an idiot.
Which
Which,
is hilarious.
I mean, come on, like, while I agree with that, I don't think that that was his initial intent when he wrote Zeta Gundam in the '80s. I think
Right.
that because a lot of it, you know, he'll mention in the interview about how disenfranchised he was with the anime industry, but
Mhm.
that was as a result of the interactions that he had with Sunrise in 1992, 1993, after Victory Gundam, when the Bandai purchase went through and all of his creative rights were stripped away. So it's like, with the benefit of hindsight, yeah, of course he hates the anime industry, but like in 1985, when he was given complete creative freedom when it came to
Yeah.
Zeta Gundam. Remember, this is when he was coming back after the Gundam movie trilogy had aired in 1980. He was given a blank check. "Hey, make a Gundam the way that you want to." That was Zeta Gundam. And so
Yeah.
for him to say that the entire theme of the show was a critique of anime, especially considering that, like, then Double Zeta Gundam was a real critique of anime, to the point that the opening's theme song
Yeah.
was "It's not anime." Like, I think that he is kind of revising his own interpretation of what he did back in the '80s, which is fine, like, that's his right to do so, but again, it's important to remember context is everything when it comes to this stuff.
And,
Um
I don't know how much this is true, but it's like, for me to get into Gundam was kinda because it wasn't like other anime, and even when I go back and watch other animes, sometimes I'm like, "I don't really like it's very rare that I'll like something that anime that's not like a horror, or dark sci-fi. Like, it's very rare for me to like some general story that's just telling a story of characters and there's conflict, because there's nothing extreme in Gundam
No.
other than yeah, other than maybe like the depth of the storytelling, in terms of the reality of things.
Right.
Um, you know, so I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think that there's, and in particular, like, I think that obviously Gundam characters tend to be portrayed in a much more, what's the word I'm looking for? They're much more realistic than typical anime characters that are like,
Right.
you know, the shonen anime characters where it's like everything's rah, rah, rah. And, you know, Gundam characters tend to be pretty complicated, and you kind of sometimes you find yourself asking, like, why did they do that? And it's like, well,
Yeah.
because human beings are kind of messy and sometimes they do
Right.
silly things. Like, not everyone's perfectly always going to do the thing that you expect them to do.
Yep.
Um, and, so yeah, he reflected on, the idea of the ensemble cast feeling like a burden to him at the time, and that's why he kept killing characters off, and he
Mm.
felt that the ending of Zeta was dark and cautionary, reflecting a disillusionment with the anime industry and contemporary politics in the '80s. Again, I don't think that that's necessarily true based on what we know, like, from the Zeta Gundam pitch documents and the way that
Mm.
Zeta Gundam is actually portrayed. In a lot of ways, um, even just, like, the idea, like, oh, well, and this the title "Love is the Pulse of the Stars" kinda came out as part of a new translation, but I think that it fits with the original story too, is the idea is that love conquers power. I don't wanna say love conquers evil, because love conquers power, and there's a unique parallel to an '80s film that I'm a huge fan of, one of my favorite sci-fi fantasy films, Krull.
Mm.
Is, there's a scene in, like, the 3rd act of Krull in which, the main antagonist, the Beast, sends a shapeshifter to try and seduce the young prince away from his quest to rescue the princess, and he's, like, broadcasting this to the princess, right? And he's saying, like, "Oh, love is fleeting, power is eternal. I watch as your prince is going to betray you right now." And just as he's, like, you know, getting undressed with this girl, she pulls her claws out and she's ready to kill him, and she's like, "I was gonna kill you, but yeah, you know, I work for the beast. I am." I was sent to tempt you, and if I couldn't tempt you, I would kill you. But in the hours that I knew you, I loved you." And, like, the beast gets upset with her and kills her, and, in that moment, the princess says, like, "No, don't you see, is like, power is fleeting, love is eternal." And why I draw that comparison is because when you look at a character like Shirako, who is a character who treats love as a tool for manipulation and for
Yeah.
coercing people into doing the things that he wants them to do. Characters like Rekua and Sarah, where he uses their emotions in order to make them act in ways that he wants them to act, compared to someone like Camille and all of his friends and allies, even in the last moments of Emma, like, and again, not even romantic love, like familial, like platonic love between Emma and Camille, where Emma in her last moments is like, Camille, use my power, use my body to go beat Shirako. Like that, just in that moment, emphasizes that even though I know there's like the meme, kill 'em all, Tomino, even in that moment, Camille uses the love of all of his friends, all of his family that he's gained to that point, and uses that to beat the raw power that Shirako
Right.
wields. And so, even though the ending of Zeta is kind of a bittersweet one, to me, it's always represented the triumph of love over power and hope over despair. So, for the creator of the show to sit here, what, 30 years after, no, this would have been 25 years after the original airing of Zeta Gundam, and say like, "Oh, well, it was a dark despair kind of anime." I'm like, "Well, dude, did you even watch your own anime?" Like,
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I like though that he says, I mean, it's more about what people got out of Zeta, although I really like what you were saying there. There goes, and to be fair, they weren't wrong.
yeah.
After all, many respected works of art portray protagonists descending into madness. But I mean,
Yeah.
but I do I do like your point about the love and the power. Isn't that the plot of Back to the Future? No,
Yeah, right? So, yeah, even here, Tomino says it, like, "So I had to accept it. Works take on meanings beyond their creator's intent. That is how art lives." Isn't
wow.
it?
Yeah, that's true. That is how art lives. I mean, like, because it's being I mean, does art well, I guess this is true. I was about to say, does art exist if there's no one to take it in? But if it's being expressed, it exists,
Right.
and you can interpret it differently later on. Um,
100%.
well, what's interesting? Here's something. When I was younger, I hated songs with electric guitars.
Hmm.
I know. And then I got over that right before being a teenager. But I just remember hearing an electric guitar that was just too
The
fake.
jangly.
Well,
Yeah.
it's because it's something electronic. It is kind of weird that I thought that when I was younger. It's like it's something electronic, but it's just a guitar. You might as well be using a keyboard or something. But I kind of get it later. It's you're expressing something,
Yeah.
and then I interpreted it later as, oh, okay, I see. This is like you're performing,
Right.
and expressing. And the electronic part was really just to amplify that performance, and then it just became a sound. So,
Yeah, it's interesting to me how often that happens where technology will come out that you think is to make things more convenient, but when in reality it actually allows you to express yourself in different ways. Because
yep,
I think of something like autotune is, the idea of autotune was some people can't sing, so let's fix their voices in order to make it so that they sound like they can sing. But what has come out of that is that more people actually use autotune to artistic effect than they do
yeah,
for corrective effect. Isn't that interesting?
yeah. I know it's because it has that interesting sound you can get out of it, and so people would be using it for that. Yeah, yeah. I always find that stuff interesting. It's just tools,
Yeah,
How do you use them? Like a
exactly.
mobile suit. I mean, you could just go slaughter people with a mobile suit, or you could just fly around. Yeah.
Well, even your art. So, like, reframing Zeta Gundam after 9/11, Tomino specifically rewrote the ending in order to allow Kamille to live and to not be afflicted by Shirako because he felt that entertainment should offer hope rather than despair to counteract the troubling times that we were going through in 2004. It's kind of funny to sit here and we're like, "Man, troubling times in 2004, like, give me 2004 over
Yeah, I
2024, am I
know.
right?" No,
Wow.
but no, in reality, it's like, I think that that should be the point of entertainment all the time, right? Like, so
Yeah.
it's interesting to say, "Hey, I should reframe this entertainment to be hopeful," when it's like, that's what it should always have been, and in my interpretation anyway, it's what it always was, but I
Yeah.
think that this was his, um, based on his own interpretation of how things played out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like some things like so for instance, he talks about how in the TV series characters died frequently, which symbolized like destruction, but in the films the characters remain present, which symbolizes kind of a coexistence. But I didn't really pick that up because honestly, to me, in the films, only a few characters actually survive that didn't die in these series, right?
Yeah. Camille. Well, and
Camille.
even that he was survived anyway in the other game. But
Yeah, Emma still dies,
yeah.
Rekoa, Sarah, Jared, Mauar, like, uh, I'm not sure
Yeah,
who
interesting.
he's talking about. I guess
Yeah.
you could argue that maybe 4 lived.
Um uh, and he's talking about the Zeta films.
Yeah,
Could he be yeah, I don't know. Hmm.
mhm.
See,
Yeah,
he could be wrong about his own art.
exactly, right? So here he says, linking back to his point about national identities, another important element is that Zeta lets its characters age. In anime, no one ever wanted to tackle that. Aging was considered too much trouble, but I did it anyway. So in Zeta,
Mm.
you have people saying 10 years ago, I fought as Char, but now I'm older. And the younger ones look up to Amuro saying he was our hero. Um, which even Fukui says that's precisely what people love about Zeta Gundam,
I
which I agree.
yeah, for me, when I'm watching, I'm like, "Why isn't Amuro here? What? That's Char." And then that went on for episodes.
Yeah.
And it's like, I was like, "That's weird storytelling." Rarely ever do sequels do something like that.
Right, because, it's forcing people to face a reality that we don't typically wanna face as children or young adults, is that we are going to get older, we are going to retire at some point, right? And so, everything is about passing the torch to the next generation, and there aren't very many creative works, anime, film, otherwise, that actually articulate that well, you know? Like,
Yeah.
can you think of any examples that also show, like, characters aging and don't say the Star Wars sequels because I don't even wanna talk about them. But
No, there's that what, Richard Linklater, trilogy where he filmed them, like, 10 years apart, 5 years apart.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, same actors, but different times in their life throughout their life.
That's cool.
Yeah,
That
I'll have
reminds
to
me of, man, in I think it was in the '50s, they did a documentary series called 7 Up. Are you familiar with this?
no.
So they had a group of seven-year-old British kids that they interviewed, like, I think it was late '50s, early '60s, and, they asked them like, "Oh, where are you from? What do you wanna do?" Like, blah, 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 and then they checked in with them every 7 years for the rest of well, for as long as they could keep up with them, because obviously some of them, it's like they never found like, they might have just disappeared. And it was
Wow.
just so interesting to see the way that people changed over time. But my favorite one is there was this like kind of well-to-do young girl. She was from a wealthy family. And when they interviewed her at 21, so this was the third interview that they did with her, she was like smoking cigarettes, drinking. She was like, I don't want to be involved with my family anymore. I can't see myself ever settling down. I just like I can't stand the way that the current government is. I can't stand the way that the world is. I just want to like go live on a commune somewhere. And then they check in with her at 28, 7 years later, 3 kids, married, and living in like the suburbs. Like it's fascinating the way that people can and
Right,
again, it just goes back to this idea that I'm telling you guys is like Tomino 1985 is not Tomino 2004 and is
right.
definitely not Tomino 2025.
Yeah, and he's supposed to be working on a new anime, right? Or maybe not an anime, but, we'll
Maybe
see.
not, it would
Isn't
be
he working on a new Gundam? Didn't
there
there's some
was a rumor, that he
okay.
might be working on a new Gundam, but it wasn't confirmed whether it was an anime or not. I think
Oh,
you broke that news, didn't you?
well, yeah, that he's the as a executive producer on the movie, on the live action movie, but yeah, okay, maybe then that's what was being referenced, because I
Interesting.
remember hearing something about he's working on another Gundam show, but what if they were just talking about he's executive producing? Hmm,
Could be the case.
yeah, that's interesting.
Mhm. But yeah, so to close out the interview, Fukui talks about like obviously the characters dropping like flies, and Tomino honestly wanted to write characters out of the story, but couldn't bring himself to do it, which, I'm thankful that that was the case. I do think that there was a lot of story elements that were truncated in a new translation as a result of that because it was trying to pack like this big cast into 3 movies that needed 50 episodes.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, interesting stuff,
yeah,
and I think that that's what makes Zeta Gundam: A New Translation so unique compared to, like, say, the Gundam movie trilogy of 1980, because
yeah,
that was made, like, literally on the heels of
mhm.
the original show.
Almost like fixing it, almost
Right,
like because of the troubled production, yeah,
whereas this is like a reinterpretation 20 years after the fact.
yeah, and it's just so crazy to think Double Zeta is just completely ignored.
To
To the
this
point
day.
where there's nothing with Char's counterattack. I mean, so that was just a film, it's what would you do? But you think maybe there could be some sort of he would do something, I so it's interesting that he kinda stopped with Zeta.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the sense of kinda throwing up his hands and giving up when it came to Double Zeta,
Yeah,
but yeah, I even within Char's counterattack, I feel like he kind of held back and didn't express himself in ways that, uh, because like I said, I always view Char's counterattack as more like a fan service, and not fan service in like the you know like, I mean fan service in the idea that, like, fans wanted to see the
yeah,
Amuro-Char rematch. Like, that was
the next lore,
yeah,
uh, yeah, the next Wikipedia entry of all the
exactly.
information, yeah.
I
Seeing
always call it the WrestleMania 3.
yeah, okay, yeah, that's a good way to put it, yeah, using yeah, wrestling.
Because obviously, like, yeah, I frame everything through wrestling. Um,
And that's funny because I sometimes complain about Char's counterattack, but the story checks out. It's just that sometimes, watching it doesn't, I don't know.
yeah, and, like, honestly, the way that I've come to interpret it, and I think I probably just came to this realization recently, is that, like, Char and Shirako are the same person. Like, Shirako is the evil mirror image of Char Aznable.
Yeah,
He's everything wrong with what Char could be, and at the
right.
time in Zeta, Char hasn't reached that level yet, but by Char's counterattack, he is
Yeah,
100% Shirako,
he
like,
is. Yep.
and in that way, it goes back to, like, the original production documents where Tomino talks about Shirako being the most powerful new type alive, and that the idea was that Shirako was supposed to kill Char. Well, in
Mm,
a way, he kinda did because he killed all of the potential that Char could have had and
right.
turned Char into Shirako 2.0.
Yeah, that's really well said. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, maybe because that's a really good point. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for indulging me as we kind of like pod through this interview. Again, if you guys haven't checked it out, definitely go through it because there's a lot of parallels between Zeta Gundam and post 9/11 consensus and American politics, which is interesting to hear from other people's perspective. I think that a lot of Western fans fall into the trap of projecting the American left right paradigm of politics onto the rest of the world as if it's like a blanket,
Right.
one size fits all. I don't think that that is true even remotely.
Yeah. No, yeah.
And I think that this conversation really expresses that is that a lot of Americans don't even appreciate what other people thought about us during 2004 Bush era, you know, Middle East wars.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's great insight for you guys to check out. And if you haven't watched it yet, go check out Adam's video on the Zero system
Oh,
that dropped
yeah.
this morning.
Yep.
Um, if you are so inclined, we've got Magna Deck boxes back in full production. So let me know if you guys want some of those. And of course, shortly I will have some MS hands available for purchase on the website as well. Until
That's
next
cool.
time, we've got the Gundam Explained show tomorrow,
That's right.
8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. So tune in for that. Am I forgetting anything, Adam? I feel like
Um, I don't know. That was a
mm,
very dense conversation. Very dense conversation.
we
Like,
we keep it light over here.
yeah,
Uh,
I know.
so
Yeah.
obviously, oh yeah, if you guys are playing G Generation Eternal, the half anniversary celebration still going on. Go log in, do your
Ah,
dailies, get your free 46 mobile suit pulls. Yeah,
cool.
good stuff there. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Until next time, we will catch you later.
See y'all.